This episode is brought to you by McAfee.
Finish your fantasy lineup?
No, but I'm joining this paid group chat with insider info.
Dude, seriously? Forward it to me. Security alert from McAfee. That group's as legit as that knockoff jersey you're wearing.
McAfee's scam detector is available in all McAfee plans for as little as $39.99 for your first year. Learn more at McAfee.com/online protection.
Every Who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one Who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and low prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello, it's Martin here, and before we begin, I wanted to let you know that this episode of Haway The Podcast is sponsored by LiveScore Bet, a proud principal partner of Sunderland AFC. And if you're looking to get started, LiveScore Bet have got a cracking welcome offer for new customers. All you've got to do is bet £10 on sports and get £30 in free bets. It's as simple as that. So, if you're ready to join the action, make sure you're doing it with LiveScore Bet, the home of total betting. This offer is available to new members only, and you need to put a £10 or more bet on sports within 14 days of opening your account. Free bets are valid for 7 days, £20 to use on Sportsbook, £10 on Bet Builder. T's and C's and deposit exclusions apply. Please bet responsibly, and remember it's for over 18s only. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Haway The Podcast, sponsored by LiveScore Bet. It's Martin here, and as we all begin the run-up to Christmas, we are back with another episode of On This Week, where we take a look back through some of the festive and not-so-festive moments that have happened during this week in the history of Sunderland AFC. And in keeping with the spirit of the season, I have two wise men here to bring gifts of goals, Frankie Gray and Kerr. It's Andrew Smithson, first of all, and also Kelvin Beattie. Hello, Andrew.
That is superb, Martin.
Like that, did you?
That is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I'm speechless. Do you know what? I had written a Christmas cracker joke for you both, and it is that bad in comparison to what you've done. I think I might just delete it. That was Martin. That was top class. Well done. Full marks for that.
That's my one for the year anyway, just as well since the year is coming to an end. And hello, Kelvin.
Ho, ho, ho.
How are you this morning, mate?
I'm good. I'm good. I feel like one of Santa's elves trotting around the house here, sorting out the Christmas tree and the decorations and getting right into the Christmas spirit.
That's what we want. And Andrew, I think you've done some digging about a couple of things that we talked about last week to let people know about.
Yes. I did a bit of extra reading. Do you want to hear me Christmas cracker joke, or shall we
should? You've tempted people now.
I have.
In fact, you've built it up.
It's genuinely pathetic. And in comparison to yours, even worse than pathetic. What sound do you get when you cross former Sunderland club mates Alan Foggen and Dennis Longhorn?
A foghorn.
Yes, that was it. I mean, I shouldn't say this given the time of year, but Jesus wept. It was bad. It was bad.
Two cracking
There-
players there, mind.
Oh, I don't know about that, Kelvin. I did a bit of reading up on them to see if they ever played together. They were apparently at the club at the same time, but never in the same starting 11. And bless them, I don't think either of them had particularly good spells at Roker Park.
The other answer to that question, of course, is long gone. So, you know.
Whey.
To be fair, I dare say a few fans probably were glad when they were long gone, because I don't think either of them were that good.
Martin, you're far too sharp at this time in the morning,
I
mind,
know.
for you. Yeah.
I've had
It's
well,
impressive.
on my second coffee here, so, you know, it's not too bad.
I thought you were, just like this quiet, down to earth dad living in Australia. I didn't know you were like a top joke writer for all the best stand up comedians and all of that.
Hey, we've all got to earn our money somewhere, haven't we, Andrew?
Aye, that's
Black
impressive.
shorts. Black shorts. Tell us about black shorts.
Yes, black shorts. You mentioned, didn't you, in the last episode, Martin, that during 1964-65, Sunderland had a little spell where the black shorts came back. The era, otherwise, up until 1972, Sunderland wore white shorts predominantly with their red and white shirts, and the white shorts never really took off. So when you mentioned last week that the black shorts did have a bit of a return, I was intrigued. I wasn't sure why that had happened, so I did a bit of digging and I got a few details, but sadly the full story still seems to be lacking. The game you mentioned, 19th of December 1964, we played Chelsea at home, and that was when the black shorts came back. Now, in the days afterwards in the papers, it's referred to as being a surprise when the players ran out on the pitch and were wearing black shorts. It was seemingly warmly welcomed by the fans, but there was no explanation why it happened. It hadn't been mentioned in advance. Nowadays, if there's a slight change to a kit, there's blooming PR and drops at the club shop and all of this. It's made a big thing of, whereas back then, little tweaks like that were just a lot more unpredictable, and you assume that the kits only got changed at the start of a season, but it was a bit more ad hoc. Things just from time to time, for whatever reason, were altered. I did do a bit of digging, and over the next few games, there was other alterations to the look. Sadly, this era is not currently on the British newspaper archive. The Echo might have had additional information, and there might be one time when I have to go to Sunderland Library to take a closer look. But there were a few Northeast titles that we were able to look at. So the following information's being pieced together from that. My assumption around why this Chelsea game saw this change, it was George Hardwick's. It was only his second home game since taking charge.
Yeah,
it was still within a month of him coming in, and this was a period of change at the club. There was an exclusive interview in the Sunday Sun the next day with the chairman, Sid Collins, and he mentions that he talks quite a lot about the ground improvements because Roker Park was going to be used for the World Cup. And he makes mention of something which obviously didn't transpire, but he said that at this point, the club were hoping for there to be a roof on the Roker end for the start of the next season. So yeah, there's been a couple of times when different regimes have said they were going to put a roof on the Roker end. It never happened, but it was a period of change, a new manager, ground improvements. It might have been a case of, oh, look, do we want to give the team colours a bit of a turnaround as well. That could have been some of the thinking. The games that followed, we played Liverpool at home on the 26th of December, and we wear black shorts. Oh, no, sorry. Liverpool wear black shorts. Sunderland go back to their white shorts for that game. We then go to Anfield to play Liverpool. Liverpool are in red shirts and white shorts. We are in white shirts and now black shorts. And on the 2nd of January, we go and play Leeds. And the black shorts are being kept, but the red and white is back. There is a comment in the Chronicle after the Leeds game that makes reference to Sunderland wearing black shorts for only the 3rd time this season. Now, that was quite telling to me. So I started going back to a few earlier away games. And it seems that prior to the Liverpool trip, we were wearing all white when we were changing colours.
Yeah.
So, maybe the black shorts that we wore at Roker Park were ordered in to go with the change strip and not the red and white strip. And then they've arrived and somebody said, hey, lads, we'll give these a go at Roker Park as well. As I say, it was all quite ad hoc. This was at the time when you didn't have cupboards stocked full of spare kit. You see it now, don't you, when players, when they're finished a game, everything gets chucked away or given to fans or put up for auction. Back in those days, if you had a kit, you blooming kept hold of it for a long time and you got plenty of use out of it. The games that follow, again, it's all a mismatch. We go and play Luton in the FA Cup. I have searched and searched. You just can't find any photographs from that game. Obviously, in those days, the Northeast papers, the Football Pinks on a Saturday night, didn't always have photos from away games because the technology wasn't there to get them. You follow that up with a game against Arsenal, where we're once again in black shorts. We play Forest in the Cup wearing black shorts. Now, this is interesting because in the Cup against Forest, we wear red socks with white turnovers. Now, those socks have been in use for quite a while, lads. But by the time we play Forest again in the league in March, we've ditched those socks and are wearing entirely red socks. So, and by that point, we've gone back to the white shorts permanently. So the black shorts have been tried. We've decided we don't want to do that for our traditional colours. We want to use white continually. In that period between the two Forest games, though, there's a couple of matches where Sunderland wear all white socks, both at home and in away games. So it's not just the shorts that are getting messed around with, it's the socks. When you look back on photos for the couple of seasons previous, it does appear if the same set of red socks with white turnovers had been used. And then, as I say, we've got these all red socks coming into use, and these white socks with tiny little red trim on them. So again, it might just have been a simple case of some of the kit was starting to be a bit shabby and it was past its best. So Sunderland just got a job lot of new gear in, and it was just getting used kind of as and when over those first few months. There was no notes in any of the papers I saw. There was no explanation of this. This is purely just going from match photographs. And then by March, we look to have settled back on this choice of white shorts and all red socks when we are wearing our preferred red and white colours.
Andrew, did the did they get that job lot from Jackie White?
Very possibly. We haven't had a mention of Jackie White's on the pod for a long time, yeah. That it could well have been Jackie White's that was supplying the kit. It just it's very different to now.
Yeah.
Football kits are really important and they're a fashion accessory, and I dare say there'll be stipulations. You'll have to register your colours with the Premier League prior to the season. Whereas in this period here, it was almost as if we were making it up as we went along for a run of about 7 or 8 weeks.
And it was nothing to do with TV coverage or anything like that, because your old black and white telly, you needed to at least one team to be in dark shorts and one team to be in white shorts,
As far as I can see, that didn't appear to be an issue. I mean, again, there were some games where our shorts and socks were a very similar shade to the team we were playing against, which in other periods seemed to be frowned upon. Another thing I spotted on terms of kits in this period, we played a friendly game up at East Stirling Clydebank in early February. They just got some new floodlights in, so they invited Sunderland along to help open those up. Sadly, the very grainy photos I could see suggested we wore our usual red and white, and there was no looking for those beautiful cerise shirts of the 50s that we spoke about recently, those reflective shirts that the players apparently wore. So, yeah, there you go. It does.
Andrew, I suspect. I suspect if you go back through the archives and look at the recruitment section in February or early March, you might see an advert for a kit man wanted at Sunderland because they may not have had one.
Yeah.
But as you say, in those days, the clubs would have got a number of shirts, a number of shorts, and that would have had to do them for the season. Typically, the following season, those kits we use as training gear. So you'd kind of pass them down to training and reserves and all that sort of stuff as well. So you got a lot of use out of them. And Andrew, at the end of last week's episode, you left our listeners with something to ponder on as well, didn't you?
Yes, I set a little quiz question as we normally do. That was the 25th of December, 1956. So the last time Sunderland played on Christmas Day, that was at Roker Park. That was a 1-0 over Aston Villa. And I asked who scored the goal. Any possibilities from you two on that one, gents, or do you just want me to fire away?
It wasn't the confused ostrich, was it?
No, he was around. That was his era, wasn't it? I believe. No, it was a name who most Sunderland fans have probably heard of. To be fair, it was Billy Bingham that scored it. He scored with about 20 minutes left. Again, though, a bit like the kits from the 60s. I found it hard to find specific details on the goal because obviously there were no newspapers on Christmas Day. And by Boxing Day, the papers were already looking ahead to the Boxing Day games. So it was hard to track down specific details and descriptions of what went on in the game, sadly. But yeah, Billy Bingham was your answer for this week's quiz question.
Very good. Right, we are going to get started on December the 22nd. Now, if you thought a derby win in the run-up to Christmas was fantastically good this year, take yourself back to 1923. So, a week earlier, Sunderland had beaten Newcastle 3-2 at Roker Park. We talked about this one briefly last week. Jock Patterson and Arthur Hawes, with 2 goals, had given us a 3-2 win over Newcastle. Over the Christmas period, certainly in the olden days, in years gone by, you'd often play the same club twice in close succession, wouldn't you? So in 1923, our next game was away at Newcastle. So December the 22nd, 1923, we went to St. James's Park. We beat them 2-0. Jock Patterson got 2 of them. So then we completed the double over them in the space of 8 days. So 2 wins in 8 days over the Mags in the run up to Christmas.
What a nice Christmas for them lot.
What a nice Christmas for us as well. 1928, this was a 4-4 draw against Sheffield United. Now, Dave Halliday scored all 4 goals. Sheffield United went 1-0 up. We went 2-1 in front. They brought it back 2-2. We went 4-2 up, and then we conceded. We were actually 4-2 up at half time, conceded 2 goals in the second half. But an interesting thing, apart from the 4 goals, was this was the only penalty Dave Halliday scored for the club. So if you imagine how many goals he scored, and consider how many he could have scored if he'd been on penalty duties during this time, it's a fairly significant haul. But yes, that was his only penalty after 14 minutes to pull the game level at that point. 2001, we talked about Claudio Reyna making his debut for us away at Southampton last week. And on this day in 2001, he made his home debut. He scored the only goal of the game as we beat Everton 1-0. 2007, we got beat off Reading 2-1. This was a game where Stephen Hunt scored a last-minute winner, and there was debate about whether it went over the line or not. This was a game that Roy Keane famously kicked off with all of the Reading staff after the game. Keane certainly wasn't happy, and I think some of the Reading backroom staff, including Kevin Dillon, who is a Sunderland lad who played for the Mags, he played a part in that as well. 2012, we beat Southampton 1-0 at St Mary's. Stephen Fletcher got the goal on 42. And in 1962, Kelvin, there was a game against Leeds at Roker Park.
There was. The backstory. There's a bit of a backstory to this game. It concerns 2 players who didn't actually play ended up not playing in the game. Back in the August of this season, Sunderland had played Leeds at Elland Road. And 25 minutes into the game, it was a hard, bordering on dirty game, it was described as in the press reports I looked at. We had a youngster playing for us, a Scots lad, an inside forward called Willie McPeat. He was a highly regarded player, and a lot of people thought he was heading for international sort of caps. Huge promise by anybody's description. Anyway, he was playing, and oddly enough, it was a Scottish lad playing for Leeds called Bobby Collins. Now, for the people that don't know him, he was a Scottish international, played at Everton, he played lots of international football. He was a fine midfield player, but in typical Leeds fashion, he was a typical Don Revie Leeds player, because apart from being able to play a lot of good football, he had a reputation for sticking his foot in and on people at times. Quite a reputation as a hard player and at times dirty player. Anyway, 25 minutes into this game in the August, he puts in a horrendous tackle on Willie McPeat. And McPeat is actually quite a big lad. He's about 6'1", 6'2", quite heavy bone kind of lad, and he breaks his thigh bone in the tackle. Actually, Willie McPeat never played again at the top level after that injury. Sunderland hung on for the play with 10 men, described as playing heroically with 10 men for 65 minutes, but they lose the game 1-0. And it's Billy Bremner who scores the goal for Leeds in a very hard Tuesday game. The Sunderland players, as things start to unfold for McPeat, the Sunderland players and certainly the senior players pretty upset at the tackle and waiting for Leeds to come. And this is them coming to Roker for the return game. The story I'd spoken to a couple of lads that were actually at this game, a couple of older boys, and they kind of back up what Charlie Hurley says in his own autobiography about the game, that he went out when the Leeds team were on the pitch before the game. Now, we don't know whether they were actually warming up. I've never been able to sort of clarify that, but they were definitely on the Roker Park pitch before the game. And he goes out and strides across to Bobby Collins and he tells him to watch his back in the game, and that there's 22 legs ready to kick him all around Roker Park. He says in his book that's the words that he used to him. He goes back in, they come out, they're in the tunnel ready to come out, and there's no sign of Bobby Collins, who by this point has apparently contracted a slight strain and doesn't actually play in the game. The game's still Tuesday though, but Sunderland win it, and they win it well. They're described as playing a very, very classy game against Leeds. A very good goal from George Mulhall, a really well-worked team goal. Now, Brian Clough's in his pump with at this point, and Cloughie has an involvement in that goal, but there's about 4 or 5 players that tee that goal up for Geordie Mulhall, and he smashes it, as was his wont, into the back of the net. His nickname, for the people that don't know, was Bullet, and he used to hit the ball really hard if he got the chance. Really good goal, 1-0 at half-time. Leeds come back, and it's actually Bremner again that scores the goal because he steps in for Bobby Collins, and it's him that scores again. Ones each. Charlie Hurley, who's still nursing his wrath that he hasn't got a chance to kick Collins, but as was his one, he was up for a corner. Leeds had put 2 players on him, Jackie Charlton being one of them. And every time he went in the box, he had 2 players manhandling him and, running lines on him and stuff like that. I'm sure John Terry was in there doing all that. He was the architect of that. He always claimed that as if it was something new that Chelsea invented, Leeds, Don Remy had his crew up to that back in 1962. But Hurley gets a goal, and he gets the winning goal. And as his Hurley's want, he says, I really enjoyed scoring that goal. And he said, I made sure they knew I enjoyed scoring that goal. and basically saying that was for Willie McPeat, There's a handy crew in that Leeds team. There's players that you lads would recognise. I mean, I've already said one, Billy Bremner. There's Jackie Charlton, there's Paul Reaney, and Norman Hunter, young Norman Hunter, plays in that game, Gary Sprake plays in the game, and a really handy winger called Albert Johansson. I mean, they're a good team. It was the same as Revy's team in the early 70s. They were a team chock-a-block with footballers, but they just had this dirty edge about them when they played. And Bobby Collins, the guy that made the tackle on McPeat, obviously he doesn't play in this game. Leeds, they finished 5th in the season. Sunderland, that had a really, really good tilt at promotion that year, but they lost McPeat, who was a big creative part of the team. And the game after this Leeds game is the one where Brian Clough gets his injury. So they've lost 2 key players in the course of half a season. That tilt promotion is a good one, but it fails almost in the last game. And they don't go by stint of goal difference with Chelsea. Chelsea sneak in there, but Leeds are 5th and still around, and that rivalry, if you could, that's a posh name for it. That rivalry continues to the next season, where it's Leeds that go up and we come up behind them in 63, 64. But Bobby Collins, he was a very good player. He was Footballer of the Year in 1965. He was voted Footballer of the Year. But the next year, he leads into Europe. He's the Leeds captain. They're playing in the first cup against Torino, and he gets a broken thigh bone in that game. And irony of ironies, it's the same injury that finished Willie McPeat.
Yeah.
And it actually finishes his top tier career. He tries to come back, but he's not. He just can't get back to the level he was at. So a hell of a game. Over 40,000 people in the ground. And really, it was the start of this long-held rivalry that we used to have with Leeds. When we played them in 1973 in the FA Cup, it was like all these stories started coming out from the older supporters, the older guys I used to get to travel to the games with would be talking about what this rivalry going back to the 60s and them doing the young lad, so that was the backstory to it, but it in itself, the game sounded a hell of a game to be at, and I would have loved to have seen Charlie Hurley enjoying his goal. He wasn't. He was a big lad, but he wasn't frightened of anybody. He'd be across there giving Jackie Charlton as much crap as Charlton had given him during the game. So just a bit of a backstory to that one.
Very good. Is that rivalry with Leeds is interesting, isn't it? Because I think it's probably changed over the last couple of decades. But I remember going to a game at Roker Park. It must have been when it would be 1988 when we just come up from the third division, and we played them at home on a nighttime game. Billy Bremner was the manager of Leeds then, and look, you're only talking 15 years after the cup final, and 25 years after these games that we've been talking about there. That rivalry still felt huge in those days. And obviously Billy Bremner's presence would have kind of aided that as well. I remember this is one of those goals. You know how you were talking about the Kevin Ball diving header that you see in your mind's eye? Billy Whitehurst scored a diving header for us in this game in the forward end. And there's no videos of it anywhere. But in my mind's eye, he comes pretty much horizontally from the edge of the box through a crowd of players just to bury it into the back of the net. A beautiful diving header, but I would love to see that goal again.
Yeah,
that was a nighttime game. It felt a really big game. That's the first game I can remember being at where I felt this is a really, really big, tense rivalry game.
Yeah.
It's slightly different now, I think.
Yeah. It's kind of softened, but there were. I can, having been to Elland Road a number of times, it used to be a feisty place to go to as an away supporter. You had to be on your P's and Q's when you went to Leeds, or go with all your pals.
I remember one game, me and my dad was sat in the home end at Elland Road.
Ooh.
That would be about 25 years ago now. That was an interesting evening. We will take a very short break there and be back soon.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
Brooks Running reminds us that we're all powered by something. Whether it's the me-time energy of a run after a day at the office, the electrifying energy of your first marathon, or the infectious energy of a group run with your friends. No matter what energy powers you, Brooks has gear specifically designed to unleash it. So lace up and let it out. Let's run there. Visit brooksrunning.com today to learn more.
The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event is on now with awesome deals on their most popular models, including adventure-ready SUVs like the Hyundai Santa Fe and Santa Fe Hybrid. There's also the stylish Elantra, packed with the latest tech, or go electric with the Ioniq 5 or Ioniq 6. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, sponsored by Live Score Bet. And we are in the middle of an episode 1 this week, and we are building up to Christmas. On 23rd of December, I tell you what, I'm glad we beat Newcastle because there's a lot of Derby-related stuff this week. 1899, Bobby Hogg scored the first league hat-trick by a Sunderland player against Newcastle. We beat the Mags 4-2 at St James's Park. The other goal for us on that occasion was scored by a chap called Tommy Beckton. 1950, we beat Liverpool 2-1 at home. Willie Watson and Dickie Davis scored the goals there. Bob Paisley was in the Liverpool team. Now, in 1994, we talked about the Bristol City game in which Martin Scott played for Bristol City and Gary Hours played for us, and we subsequently swapped them. 1994, on 23rd December, that move went through. And when you look back on the transfer fee, it was pretty significant, wasn't it? It was a deal worth 750 grand. We paid Bristol City 450 grand, and Gary Hours went the other way. And Gary Hours was, had been linked with £1 million moves to different clubs only, 18 months, 2 years beforehand. So to see him valued at just 300 grand, Martin Scott 450 grand, that deal, we weren't spending money in that early 90 period, where we were kind of, we'd kind of given Paul Bracewell a tokenary contract offer, and he'd gone to Newcastle, and we were reluctant to spend money. Crosby hadn't been backed. Butcher had been backed to some extent. It's a big fee, isn't it, for a defender back in those days? But yeah, Gary Hours went the other way.
I remember, Martin, feeling when that deal was made. I put my hand up and say I always liked Gary Hours. And I remember thinking this boy Martin Scott must be an absolute bloody world beater, because and feeling, I have to say, for the first couple of games, I thought we've given Hours away here. Watching Scotty play his first couple of games, I definitely came on to him. He was a bloody good player, Martin Scott. But his first couple of games, I was coming away thinking, what the hell? How have we done that? I thought Hours must have upset the hierarchy or something. It just seemed a bizarre transfer. That it was a hell of a lot of money at a time when you're right, we weren't spending anything, were we?
Especially for defenders who typically don't attract as high transfer fees as more attacking players do. But Martin Scott was an excellent player for us. Don't get us wrong.
He was.
You kind of look at that and go, you'd rather have kept Gary Hours and paid them 750 grand. Really, if you're going to do something like that. Yeah. But anyway.
Because we definitely had problems widening our midfield at that time as well.
We had problems pretty much everywhere at that point. Year 2000, we played Man City at the Stadium of Light, and I think Kevin Phillips was suspended for this game, so Don Hutchison went up front. Hutchison scored the goal for us. We won 1-0. But there was a future Sunderland player in the Man City team who got booked on 22 minutes and then subbed on 37. Any guesses who that might have been?
It wasn't a midfielder who took a shocking penalty in a playoff by any chance, was it?
Absolutely was, yes.
Because he was at City for a couple of years, wasn't he?
Well, he came through at City, I think, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Him and his brother.
Yes, he had a brother. I can't remember his name now.
Jim, I think.
Right. Yes, Jim and Jeff Whitley. Yeah.
Ooh, right.
So Jeff Whitley was that player in the Premier League who Joe Royle brought off before half-time. We are moving on to Christmas Eve. Now, 1904, I told you there was a lot of Newcastle derby references in this one. So we finally beat Newcastle on Wearside. We won 3-1. Dickie Jackson opened the scoring for us in the very first minute. Peter McWilliam equalised for Newcastle just before the half-hour mark. And immediately we went in front again. Harold Buckle scored on 30 minutes, and Dickie Jackson got one just after the hour to seal a 3-1 win. That was the first time in 7 games against Newcastle and Wearside that we managed to win, which finally it was obviously worth waiting for. 1921, we've talked about Kelvin's favourite, Arthur Tricky Hawes, a few times on this podcast, but he scored twice as we beat West Brom 5-0 at Roker Park. He opened the scoring on 23. Jack Mitten got a hat-trick in this game as well, as we won 5-0. 1932, we beat Chelsea 2-1 at Roker. Benny Yorston, who we've spoken about before in this pod, scored a goal, and Bert Davis got the other. Now, Christmas Day, football on Christmas Day these days is a kind of foreign concept, isn't it? We don't have it, and I don't think any of us have kind of been going to football when we've had Christmas Day fixtures, but up until 56, it was an absolute fixture of the football calendar. Often you'd play on Christmas Day and Boxing Day a lot of the time. And, when you look back at the crowds for Christmas Day fixtures, the crowds were huge. And it's interesting, isn't it? You'd think it would go the other way, where in the early part of the 20th century, you wouldn't have football on Christmas, and then potentially you would have introduced it, but it happened the opposite way to what you might have thought it would do. So you look back, and whether all the teams had too much sherry the night before or they're in a festive spirit, there's an awful lot of goals in these games as well. People obviously wanted to go and put on a show. Crowds are there, big excitement. And it seems quite a remarkable thing to look back on, but some of these games look incredible. In 1891, we had an away game at Everton, and we won 4-0. Everton were playing in Anfield at this point, so this game was held at Anfield. And obviously Everton played at Anfield before Liverpool moved into that ground. Jimmy Miller, Davy Hanna, John Auld, and Jimmy Hanna got the goals. Hugh Wilson missed a penalty for us after just 3 minutes. 1907, this was a game at Roker Park, and again, who knows what was going on here. We were 3-0 down to Bristol City after 15 minutes. So Christmas Day, everybody's turning up in great mood. 15 minutes gone, your Christmas is pretty much ruined. But Billy Hogg, George Holly, very fittingly, got goals back, and the halftime was 3-2. And Arthur Bridget knocked a penalty in to draw 3-3. 1937, we beat Huddersfield 2-1. Rach Carter and Bobby Gurney got the goals. An interesting side note to this game was a Huddersfield goalkeeper. It was a chap called Bob Hesford, whose son, Ian, kept goal for Sunderland in later years.
Wow.
1950, Tommy Wright scored 2 goals. We beat Man U 2-1 at home. 53, Fred Hall scores his only goal for Sunderland as we draw 1-1 at home to Huddersfield. 56, we beat Aston Villa 1-0. This is a game that Andrew talked about briefly early on. That was our last ever Christmas Day game, with Billy Bingham scoring the only goal. And in 1914, again, keeping on this derby theme, I'm so glad we won last week, because talking about derbies this week, if we'd not won, would have been bloody torturous, wouldn't it? But 1914, we beat Newcastle at St. James's Park, Kelvin.
We did. Let's keep it going. Let's keep the feel-good factor going.
Hey, you've got to embrace it.
It would be great to think that there was some Newcastle fans listening to this pod. I've been sending it to them, but get a listen to that one, lads. That'll cheer you right up, So, 1914 Christmas Day, and the official score in this game was 5-2. The game was played at St. James's, but Sunderland actually scored all the goals in this game. So own goals in the derby are not a new phenomenon.
Carrying on the theme beautifully,
we did score all the goals, and a young player called Bobby Best scored a hat-trick in this game as well. So you mentioned that hat-trick scorer, Robert Hogg, and we were talking about Gary Rowell earlier in the week scoring a hat-trick in this game, and Bobby Best had himself a hat-trick in this game. The pitch on the day, and part of the reason why he was able to arguably to get his hat-trick was the state of the pitch. Freezing cold day, and the pitch was icebound. Very, very hard pitch, very slippy. 40,000 fans turned up, 40,000 plus on Christmas Day, just to back up your point, Martin, about big crowds turning out. The press reports were just full of the conditions and the hat-trick hero's ability to master the conditions. The Newcastle Journal it reported, I'm just going to quote what they said about him. At any rate, the most confident player of the whole 22 and the only one who seemed capable of executing a swift turn without falling was Robert Best, the sturdy, Mickley-on-Tyne youngster who celebrated the occasion by scoring 3 goals. What a nice turn of phrase. But so the Mickley-on-Tyne lad, and described as sturdy as well. He was also he was only 5'5", which of course is why I picked this. I love a little player, me, 5'5", and he's, I think, thinking about the condition, his arse is so close to the ground, Maradona style. I think he's able to just manage these conditions probably better than everybody else. It certainly seems to give him an edge. The journal goes on about him. Such an achievement was by no means an undue reward for the display of Best, who was speedy in action, robust in method, and deadly in marksmanship. So they're full of what he does in the game. He seems to be well worth his hat-trick. He hasn't scuffed them in as he's played really, really well in the conditions. The form book said that these two teams were quite evenly matched, with both having fairly average seasons. The Sunderland team contains some pretty well-known players from what was arguably our greatest ever season in 1912-13, with the likes of Charlie Buchan, Jackie Mordew, Harry Martin, Frank Cuggy, Charlie B. Thompson, Harry Ness, and goalkeeper Leslie Scott, who all played in 1912-13. But there were some new players in there, a couple of new players who would go on to have good careers with Sunderland, Bert Hobson and Billy Cringan. And manager Bobby Cale, he'd recruited a lad from Dundee called George Phillip, and he'd bought him as a centre-half the season before, but he converted him to a centre-forward for this season. And he comes into this Derby game on 11 goals. The conversion's been really successful, but it's also the reason why Bobby Best isn't getting games. He's seen as a utility forward, Best. He was around in 1912-13, but didn't play a lot of games. He gets more games the following season. I think he plays about 28 games, scores 8 goals, but he's playing it across the whole front five. He's playing a winger one week, inside forward the next, centre forward the next. He's just got that bit. He's got that variety in his game that makes him a good squad player, but doesn't necessarily get you a game every week. He's only played 2 games coming into the late November of this season, and then he gets an opportunity, and he scores 4 goals in 4 games coming into the derby. So you're looking at a lad, and you're thinking, reading about it, you're thinking, this is a lad who's playing his way into the team. He's taking his chance and playing his way in. Anyway, the goal scorers in the game, Bobby Best scored a goal on 8 minutes. Frank Hudspeth for Newcastle missed a penner on 20 minutes. And then Best scores another goal on 31 minutes. We'll come back to that goal in a minute. Charlie Buchan scores on 44 minutes. So it's 3-0 at half-time. Best gets another one right after half-time on 49. And the lad I was talking about before, George Phillip, he gets a goal on 70 minutes. And so it's 5-0, but I think maybe there's a bit of charitable Christmas feelings going on, because we're starting to feel sorry for Newcastle, And they get a corner, and our goalkeeper, Leslie Scott, he kind of punches the ball into the goal. A bit like Jimmy Monty did at Main Road in the FA Cup run all them years ago. Punches it into the goal to make it 5-1 to Newcastle. And literally a minute or two later, and I love the description of this in the press, Harry Ness neatly lobs Scott with a view to a back pass, but it's an excellent lob right into the goal to make it 5-2. No more scoring. The game's a good one, and Best's got his hatricks. Sunderland have walloped when Yerust and Dearest on Christmas Day. Just coming back to his second goal, apparently this goal, I must have read about 4 different newspaper reports on this, and they all talk about the second goal, This is what the Journal said. I thought the Journal probably had the fruitiest description of it. He said, Best's second goal drew particular praise. Best was brimful of confidence and tremendously difficult to dispossess. He accomplished nothing better during the whole course of the game than the brilliant piece of work that preceded his second goal. He successfully beat off the challenger 3 opponents and left himself with an open goal, Lawrence being powerless to beat off his shot. So he's done the business on a pitch that some people were hardly able to stand up on. Despite scoring 8 goals in 7 games, Bobby Best, he couldn't hold his place in the team. There's a remarkable run of scoring from him, but he couldn't hold his place in the team. He only played 1 more game after this, from January the 2nd, to the season's end. Sunderland were the second highest scorers in the top tier that season with 81 goals, but George Phillip, the lad from Dundee, the centre-half, who was a centre-forward converted, he scores 22 goals, and Charlie Buchan scores 23, which is over half the goals that were scored by these 2 lads. There's elements of Phillips and Quinn there, isn't there? You kind of get a feel for a duo at work there. Sunderland finished 8th. Newcastle finished 15th. And it was a brilliant opportunity. Again, just evidencing your point earlier, Martin, about who you played Christmas, and that you quite often played double headers. So I think there is a lot of games around about the festive period against Newcastle. I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think it's a planned way of managing your fixture list anyway. So we play that game on Christmas Day. Guess who we've got on Boxing Day? We've got Newcastle at Roker Park, and we've got a chance to do the double, but typical Sunderland, we don't take it. They roll into Roker Park the next day looking for a bit of revenge. The pitch is a wee bit more playable, and they beat us 4-2. Little point about crowds, though. You'll notice 40,000 at Newcastle. Yeah, and there's only, I think, about 20,000 at Sunderland for this game. And something was going on there. It's 1914. The Great War started. And Sunderland and their players and the crowd, there was a lot. Now, I remember, Andrew, you mentioned something a couple of weeks ago about this, that there was a lot of feeling about football continuing. By this point, it was quite clear that the war wasn't going to be over by Christmas, because that was a bit of a mantra when the war started. It clearly wasn't going to be over, and there were fans and players who were really struggling with just continuing as if life was normal. Charlie Buchan was one of them. He was he'd gone to the club, gone to Robert Kyle and said, I'm going to enlist. I want to enlist. And he was reminded that he had a contract, and he would need to see the contract out to the end of the season, which he did do. Now, what's what's interesting, I tripped over this, to be honest, this issue. I was looking at the team that played that day and thinking about this comment by Charlie Buchan, who he goes and then lists at the end of the season. And I thought, I wonder how many other of the team went and enlisted. And so I went and checked, and all of them did.
Oh, really?
The whole of that team that played on Christmas Day, by the end of that season, had enlisted. And that was the feeling within the squad about. And they didn't want to play in the, I think they called it the regional leagues for the following season. And the club actually took a decision to shut down for 3 years. I think they played about 3 charity games, and they shut down for 3 years. In essence, it almost broke the club. They had to do a lot of work to rescue the club financially. But all of that 11 that played on Christmas Day, they enlist by the end of the season. As football's relegated to the second back page of the journal on Boxing Day that year, and the back page is given over to war news. So we've got the Scharnhorst being sunk. We've got terrible, terrible casualty lists from the Western Front. And then tucked away is a lovely little story about the soldiers in the north of France, the Germans and the Allies, singing Christmas carols to each other over the top of the trenches. So a little bit of festive spirit emerges. I would suggest there was probably more there than there was at St. James's Park in the 5-2 game. But there you go. That was the Christmas Day 1914. What a way to spend your Christmas. Brilliant.
Very good. Hey, double headers, Derby double headers over Christmas. There's a lot to be said for that, mind. Could you put up with that, Andrew? Could you cope with that?
It's not whether I could cope with it. I'm just trying to think, how would you navigate that with the family? You know, like somebody's travelled up from whatever part of the country to spend Christmas with you, or you know, the kids are desperate to open their presents. Well, you just sort that out yourselves. I'm off away to the match there. Ta-ra. I might see you in it's a double header, actually, so I might see you. I might not bother coming home tonight. I might just stay out. I tell you what, though, it is Kelvin's talking to me there and giving us the flavour of that game. It's amazing to think, isn't it, that, well, I mean, that's over 100 years ago now, but in another 100 years, there'll be somebody sat there telling us the story of what happened in the most recent Weir Tyne derby and talking about the crowd and the goal and the build-up and everything. It I can't quite explain it, but there's something quite warming about that. I like it. I like that there's this constant thread throughout life.
It's you're right, Andrew. You know, it is one of the things I always I quite like looking for when we're talking about these games from way back, the things that are the same. It's not the differences, it's the things that are the same, you know, that you stick your scarf on and you go out of the game, you know. I wrote an article when you're on about Christmas and how you navigate that. If anybody's interested in a perspective on that, I've got an article in the On This Day section called "And Christmases Were Never the Same Again." My old mother, she let me go to a Boxing Day game, the first one I ever went to. I think it was in 1968, and she just every year after that, it was Christmases aren't the same, because I'd be away to the bloody football, you know. And she used to say that Sunderland could make or break Christmas in the house when I was a laddie. I'd either be sulking in my bedroom or rampant down the stairs, winding the Newcastle supporting brother up. It was either one or the other.
Brilliant.
Christmases were never the same again. Yeah.
Indeed, we will leave Christmas Day there and take a very short break, and we'll be back soon.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, and we are on Boxing Day in our Christmas on this week. Now, 1923, Sunderland beat Everton 3-2 at Goodison Park. We were 2 goals down, but Arthur Hawes, Jock Patterson and Charlie Buchan, all people who we've mentioned in this episode so far, they scored, and Sunderland won 3-2. 1934, we beat Everton 7-0 at Roker Park. And again, we've talked about these double headers. 24 hours before, we'd lost 6-2 to them at Goodison. So we brought them back to Roker Park. We beat them 7-0. They must have had some motivation after getting turned over down on Merseyside. That put us back to the top of the league in the top division. Bobby Gurney got 2, Jimmy Connor got 2, Patsy Gallagher got 2, and Charlie Thompson got the other one. But, again, we talk about these entertaining games, big scorelines, double headers, encapsulated there in those 2 games on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, 1934. Now, 1949, this is a really interesting one. I don't know if either of you know much about this game. So we beat Stoke City 3-0 at Roker Park. Len Shackleton got one of the goals, but a 24-year-old debutant called Norman Case scored 2 for us. Now, he'd been at a few clubs previously, Sheffield United included, and hadn't made a first-team appearance. He'd never played in the Football League before. He ends up at Roker Park. He scores 2 in his debut. Again, we win 3-0. He only makes 3 more appearances for us. And then he goes off and has a unremarkable career elsewhere, drifts down the leagues and ends up in Ireland, I think. But it's a really strange one when you look at it on surface level, because you've got this 24-year-old striker brought into a top flight team, having never played in the Football League, being around clubs all the time, scores 2. You must think, oh, I've finally cracked it. I've made it after all of these years of waiting. And that was kind of it. That was the end of his story. That was the end of the case.
Rather odd case as well.
Rather odd case, indeed.
There must be players who have the talent, and you've said there he's been at a few clubs, and obviously he must be capable to have scored 2 goals in a league game, but then for whatever reason they can't fulfill that promise. You'd love to know the full details and what happened around there. Also, it does seem, doesn't it, that Christmas Day, Boxing Day is a time when you get peculiar scores, or you get peculiar incidents. Maybe he hit lucky, and maybe he was against a goalkeeper who'd had a couple of tipples on Christmas evening and wasn't quite at his sharpness. I don't know. I don't know.
He must have thought all of his Christmas had come early, hadn't he? Norman Case on that day.
Martin, you are warm today. This is brilliant.
We've waited long enough, haven't we? 1950, a year later, we beat Man U away 5-3. Ivor Broadus scored a hat-trick. Billy Bingham, who we mentioned earlier, and Dickie Davis got the other goals.
Did you say Ivy Broadus there?
Ivy? Keeping in the Christmas theme.
Ivy Broadus.
Very good. 1962, this was a game, Kelvin, you touched upon earlier. So talking about the Leeds game, obviously Brian Clough suffered that was essentially a career-ending injury. He made a few comeback games the season after, but never was quite right. But that home game against Bury, and it's even for me looking back on this game and this incident, you've seen footage of it and all that sort of stuff. You just wonder what the course of Sunderland's path would have been, how that would have been different, how Brian Clough's subsequent managerial career would have been different if this hadn't happened. And it's one of those sliding doors moments really in football, isn't it? But Sunderland and Brian Clough could have taken completely different journeys after this point if he'd not got this injury.
Sliding door, sliding tackle. Horrendous. You're right, though. Because he had the stamp of a lad that would play for. You could have imagined him playing well into his mid-30s, couldn't you? Because he was a fit critter. He hardly drank at that time, and he probably could have played well into his mid-30s and done a job. But there you go.
I think when you read about Brian Clough, now I've read pretty much every book going about Brian Clough. He always seemed to hold. Is regret the right word, or is it something stronger? He seemed scarred by and bitter to some extent that his playing career had been finished so abruptly and so early when he was at the peak of his power. And no matter what he achieved in his managerial career, he always seemed to hold that.
Yeah,
I don't know what the right word is, but kind of resentment or grudge or whatever it was. He was never comfortable or content with what has happened. He was he regretted deeply that sharp end to his playing career. I think that when you read in between the lines of some of the things that have been written about him, that's kind of whether it drives him on managerial wise. I think it probably does to some extent, but it's also kind of at the root of some of the other issues he subsequently had. You said he didn't drink much in his playing days. I think that wasn't necessarily the case later on in life, but a sad day for Sunderland and Brian Clough.
It's a remarkable day in Sunderland history because, you think as well, Bob Stokoe was on the pitch.
Well, and he was telling Brian Clough to get up and he was giving him grief, wasn't he?
To think that two figures that would go on and have such influential managerial careers, one of whom was always in this kind of will he, won't he come to Sunderland, and one of whom delivered probably the greatest day in Sunderland's history. Again, it's just fascinating to think who would have known on that day that they were witnessing two pivotal figures in football history. It really, really fascinating. And as you were talking there, Martin, I just thought this shows how well known this incident is. That I remember the name of the Bury goalkeeper from the early. Yeah. It's staggering. There's no reason why we would know that. And I've just gone and looked him up there. Lad called Chris Harker. I never knew this. He's from the Northeast. He was born in Shiremoor. Now, where's that? Is that Newcastle way somewhere?
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, he was born in Shiremoor. He'd been at West Allotment Celtic, and he'd been on the books at Newcastle.
Sure.
Just another little odd thing that Brian Clough, who was famously from the Northeast, and his career is injured by colliding with a fellow Northeasterner.
And the the other thing that when you're talking about two great managers that would influence the club, there was a not so great manager passed the ball to Clough. Good club servant Lenny Ashurst, but he was on the pitch as well, wasn't he? And him and Clough, Clough never he never forgave him for the past. When your point about his resentment for that career-ending situation, Martin. Him and Ashurst had a bad falling out, the two of them, and they never got away with each other at all after that.
And it's funny as well to consider, Bob Stokoe's part in this, right? So you've got a former Newcastle captain who's played European football, blah, blah, blah with them, FA Cups, playing for Bury here, and he's got a role in this because, Brian Clough was very vocal about Bob Stokoe standing over him, telling him he was codding, I think was the phrase that was used, wasn't it? So if you can imagine, in today's world, you've got a former Newcastle captain who's played a big part in our star player's injury. Our star player's subsequently been very vocally critical of him. 10 years later? He's going to be that would never stand up now with the fan reaction on social media and all that sort of stuff. Bob Stokoe would never get near the Sunderland job because of those two things. He just wouldn't have been tolerated. Whatever you want to take out of that, I don't know, but it's kind of interesting when you think about it, because if it'd been different times, that would have never happened again. The course of history changes completely.
We would have known much more about it.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. I don't know how what was that Stokoe's comments, were they common knowledge at the time? Certainly, I got my information from reading back Brian Clough's book. That was the first place I ever read that. So
that. If you look at today, if it was today, Brian Clough would have been talking about that in the press. He would have been talking about that online, and that builds and builds and builds, doesn't it? And the little conversations people would have maybe had in the pubs around that incident at the time, that would have exploded today, and it would be the case world, wouldn't it?
If it had happened today, the sad fact is Clough's career probably wouldn't have been over. He could have.
That's the other side of it, isn't it?
If it happened today, that game probably doesn't even start.
The
game doesn't start, so the injury doesn't happen. If he gets that kind of injury today, it doesn't end his career. He's able to come back because of medical science has found a way of dealing with all that stuff. But that's the sliding doors of the situation. It is intriguing, though, isn't it? The two of them, it's Stokoe standing over him, and you're thinking 10 years, 11 years on there, and we're all in. We're still connected. There's still a connection there, isn't there?
You go back a few years. You chuck Don Revie into the mix.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating dynamics and different things that went on, how they affected Sunderland in the future. Boxing Day 2000, Sunderland went to Valley Parade to play Bradford City, and Kevin Phillips got a hat-trick as we won 4-1. I think was this the game that Elvis came onto the pitch and bowed at Kevin Phillips's feet? I think it was, wasn't it? Brilliant stuff.
Martin, that in a nutshell just sums up this podcast, because we have gone from the very philosophical and the deep thinking about how the world could have changed if Clough had played in a different era to Elvis Presley running on the pitch to bow down at the feet of Kevin Phillips.
I hate to burst your bubble, Martin, but Elvis was actually dead by this point, So.
That's what you think. 2013, Sunderland beat Everton 1-0 at Goodison Park. this was a game that we went into it with a number of injuries, and we had a centre-half pairing of Valentin Roberge and Diakite, didn't we? But we won 1-0. Tim Howard was sent off in the build-up to a penalty, which was converted by Key, and we managed to hold on and win 1-0. Now, December the 27th, we've already mentioned this chap, but in 1904, very fittingly, George Hurley made his debut for the club. He scored after 10 minutes in the 1-1 draw against Sheffield Wednesday. He was 19-year-old at the time, and he went on to play 315 games, scoring 159 goals. 1952, we went back up to third place in the First Division after beating Wolves 5-2 at Roker. Dickie Davis got 2, Billy Bingham got 2, and Harry Kirtley got the other. 1957, Len Ashurst, who we've just mentioned with his pass to Brian Clough in that Bury game, he signed from Prescott Cables on a part-time contract, which enabled him to keep working as a printer at the time. 1983, 2 goals from Paul Bracewell and another from Pop Robson gave us a 3-0 home win over West Brom. Now, Kelvin, I don't know if you remember this game at all. Paul Bracewell's goals were few and far between, so to get 2 in a game is a pretty standout moment for him goal scoring wise. Can you remember anything about those goals?
I can't, because I wasn't actually at that game.
You weren't allowed to spoil Christmas, that's why.
I don't know why I wasn't at that game, but I wasn't at it, which was unusual because I used to like going to footy at Christmas, and I was still living in the northeast at that time, so I can't remember why I wasn't at it. But the reason why I remember I wasn't at it was Brace scored 2 goals, and do you know what I'm saying there? It was so unusual. He was not a goal scorer.
And
so
when
2 goals.
When he did score, they were generally quite spectacular goals.
Yes,
as well, weren't they? So we'll have to dig those out of the archives. 2008, Ricky Sprazier had been in temporary charge for a couple of weeks after Roy Keane had left the club, but he was appointed as manager permanently on that day in 2008. He had a few good wins and everything seemed to be rosy, but it kind of didn't turn out to be so in the long term. 2021, we played Doncaster away and beat them 3-0. Ross Stewart, Elliot Embleton, and an own goal got that victory. I think that was live on TV from memory. It was one of those games that in the League
date?
One.
What was the date for that? The 27th, as opposed to the 26th. Yeah. I was there. I was at that game, and probably I was allowed to go because it had been moved away from the 26th.
No, that's right.
Oh yeah.
Very good. Now, December the 28th, 1963, we beat Leeds 2-0 at Roker Park. George Hurd and Nick Sharkey got those goals. 1992, we beat Grimsby at home 2-0. Don Goodman and David Rush on the score sheet. 98, we beat Crewe 2-0 at the Stadium Light. Mickey Bridges and Danny Dickio got those ones. And a year later, this was a game against Manchester United at the Stadium Light where we went 2-0 up after 12 minutes. And it was kind of a top-of-the-table clash, wasn't it? Everybody was thinking, Sunderland are really going to keep this early season form going. We played Man U, who were the best team in the world at the time. We went 2-0 very early on. Record crowd at the time at the Stadium Light, but Roy Keane got a goal back for Manchester United in the first half, I think, and then Nicky Butt got one very late on to equalise.
Keno that day was
unbelievable.
What a game he played that day, mate. Yeah.
I remember being at that game, and obviously we've seen Manchester United at Sunderland now and again over the past sort of decade. You'd watched a lot of them on TV, of course. 2 things stood out for me that day. Roy Keane, as a footballer, was magnificent. And he had this reputation at the time, didn't he, about just being a hard man and a really tough tackler and all that sort of stuff, which he was, right? But as a footballer, he was world class. Absolutely. And on that day, and he needed to be, by the way, because we were brilliant. World class. The other thing that stood out to me that day was how hard Manchester United worked off the ball.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Again, you're looking at great teams, and you concentrate a lot on what they do with the ball, and what they do in possession. Off the ball, they worked harder than any other team I'd ever seen up to that point. And I walked away from that going, I know why they're so good, because they do all of that stuff off the ball. They worked incredibly hard, and their determination and desire to get back into that game was great. And it was one of those games where we played so well, but if we'd played another 15 minutes, Manchester United probably win it, because they just had the desire.
Yeah.
2004, this was a game at Nottingham Forest. We won 2. Now, I remember this game because we set off driving down, me and my dad, and we got stuck in all sorts of traffic going to Nottingham. We tried different routes, and just traffic jam after traffic jam. It was half time by the time we got into the ground. Score was still 0-0. And then all of the action, unfortunately, was in the second half. Stephen Elliott put us 1-0 up very early on. Now, future Sunderland player scored for Forest to equalise.
I have an idea, but I'll let you have a pop if you think you know it, Kelvin.
No, I don't.
Is it Andy Reid?
It is Andy Reid. Yeah, he equalised for Forest on that day.
Ooh, top lad.
And then Marcus Stewart scored the winner very late on, which was great goal.
It was a good goal, and it was in front of you and your dad and the away fans, so happy days. You've just reminded me, do you remember last week I said I was at a youth game and there was 2 or 3 famous old Sunderland players there?
Yeah.
You've just reminded me, Andy Reid was at that game as well.
Oh, really?
I'm trying to think, maybe me and my mate were the only 2 people in the crowd who weren't former professional footballers. Andy Reid was there. Yeah. But of course, it was against Forest Youths. That's why.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I used to like watching Andy Reid play. He gave me hope that I could get my boots back on, and because we weren't just the same height, we were the same shape.
Such a good player, though. Such a good player.
Talented lad. Yeah.
Now,
Martin.
Yes, mate.
Did you get home all right though after that? Because that's a canny old slog getting caught in all those traffic jams.
No, I think we got home fairly easily, but yeah, the trip there, and it was one of those where you go, oh, we'll leave a bit earlier because it's Christmas, it's going to be busy. Every road we went down was bloody bumper to bumper, and there was stuff. Eventually got there though, and it was worth it in the end. 2009, we played Blackburn, drew 2-2. Darren Bent scored 2 goals. El Hadj Diouf equalised for Blackburn in that game. Pascal Chimbonda was also in the Blackburn side. It was notable because David Mailer made his debut for us in that game. And he was another, talking about cruciate ligament injuries, kind of scuppering careers. He was another one who, I know he went on to have a good solid career with Hull and other teams, but I think he could have really been a top player if he hadn't got injured, because he looked the real deal when he came through at Sunderland.
Yeah. I used to like his bite, me. I used to like his the way he could play, but I quite liked his ball winning.
Oh, he was actually very reminiscent of Roy Keane's style of play when you talk about those sort of things. Now,
his brother Norman was a canny lad as well, wasn't he?
I'm sure we've ventured on that territory before, haven't we?
Have we?
I'm glad, Kelvin, because we can finally move on from my dreadful Christmas cracker joke now. I think you've helped me brush that under the carpet now with that one, with pulling that reference out.
Now then, for our last little bit today, we're going to go back to 1935 in a game at Roker Park, Andrew, against Arsenal.
Yes, Saturday, the 28th of December, 1935, and just the scoreline alone stands out. We played Arsenal, as you say, and Sunderland won 5-4, which immediately you look at that and you think, wow, what a game that must have been. But then when you do a bit of digging and look into the context, it was even more sensational. What a game this must have been. Arsenal had been league champions for 3 seasons in a row going into 1935-36. That last season, it had actually been Sunderland that pushed them close to the title. They won it. We finished second, and I think it was only 4 points that we trailed them by in the final reckoning. So yeah, Sunderland were determined to go one better. By this stage in the 35-36 season, we are league leaders, and this game really rubber stamps our position. In real terms, it puts us like 7 points clear of Derby County, who were at that point in second place. But it's also, you get this utter sense of the changing of the guard, that Arsenal have been beaten. It's not just the points difference, it's the confidence we gain by beating Arsenal. I mean, they were still in the hunt. They were third at the time, so they were still a top quality side, and they were fancying themselves to make it 4 titles in a row. So us beating them, and in the way we managed to do it, was a real statement that, yeah, Sunderland are serious hitters now. The campaign had actually started with a loss to Arsenal down in London, but since then we'd been gradually improving, getting a bit of momentum behind us. We hit the top spot in November and really started flexing our muscles from that point. The Arsenal game at home, the return game, was our 11th Roker Park fixture of the season. And prior to that, we'd won all 10 games. We had a 100% record. So you can see, can't you, we're getting this sense of invincibility around us. Top of the table, not dropped a point at home. It was our 3rd game in a week at home. We'd beaten Challengers Derby. Then on Boxing Day, we'd beaten Leeds. And now here comes the big one. As I say, 3 games in a week, and yet it's such a massive fixture. It's so highly anticipated. We still draw in a crowd of 58,000. I mean, those are phenomenal numbers. And I think it wasn't just because it was against the champions. I think it was because fans could sense that things were happening, and this game could be a real watershed moment in the season. The team for Sunderland, in goal, Jimmy Thorpe. Now, let's not forget that this is December we're talking about. By February, Jimmy Thorpe has passed away because of injuries sustained on the pitch playing against Chelsea.
Yeah.
So that's a tragic story. He's in goal. In front of him, you've got Tom Morrison, Alex Hall, Charlie Thompson. That's the different Charlie Thompson to the one you mentioned in your game, Kelvin, where Bobby Best came up with the goals. Charlie Thompson, Jimmy Clark, and Sandy McNabb. That's the defence there. Across the front, we've got Bert Davies. Now, I think one of you mentioned Bert earlier on in the game as well. I think he might have scored in another game in this week. Raish Carter, Bobby Gurney, Patsy Gallagher, and Jimmy Connor. Now, that is a Sunderland team and a half. That is a quality side. There's almost as if to prove that how good of a side this is. There's a school of thought that suggests this was the best ever game played at Roker Park in its history. And people feel that maybe the only reason it isn't better remembered is because it was so long ago. When we left Roker Park, there was that vote, and the Man City game in 1973 was voted as the best ever game at Roker Park. But that had only been 20-odd years earlier, so there would have still been a lot of people who'd been at the Man City match and were able to vote. Whereas when you're talking about a game from 1935, perhaps it's not as fresh in people's memories. But yeah, this is the type of game we're talking about. It is being spoken of in the same breadth as the very best moments in a football ground, which stood for almost a century. Obviously, it's 5-4, so I'm not going to give you a full match report, you'll be pleased to know. I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the goals. Sunderland went 1-0 up after 7 minutes when Bobby Gurney kind of dummies the ball, lets it pass him, and Davis drives it in. After 18 minutes, it's 2-0. Davis is now the creator. He hangs a high ball into the box. The Arsenal defenders are a bit hesitant, so Gallagher just nips in and heads it home. 27 minutes played when Cliff Baston smashes in a penalty for Arsenal to make it 2-1. Thorpe did actually get a hand to the penalty, but it was just hit with so much power, it still went into the back of the net. 35 minutes, it goes 3-1. We have a really smart move down the left wing. The ball ends up at the feet of Carter, who hits a shot underneath the body of the goalkeeper. And then just before half-time, just a few seconds before half-time, Carter's on the score sheet again. He makes it 4-1. It's another penalty. It had been Carter that had won it when he'd been pushed in the back when he was trying to reach a cross from Gurney. But he's able to get himself back on his feet. And again, it's a really powerful penalty. No chance for the keeper. After the break, Arsenal do rally. They're clearly not willing to let their titles slip. They're clearly not willing to give Sunderland the points when they know how hard Sunderland had pushed them the season before. It's very quickly 4-2 after the break. Our defence is being stretched. We've been dragged out wide, and that leaves space in the middle of the box for Ted Drake to score. About 5 minutes after that, it's 4-3 because Arsenal play a free kick into the box and Ray Bowden heads it in. We've now only got a lead of 1 goal, so it's crucial that Sunderland get the next goal and pull themselves round. There's a bit of a tactical switch where Gallagher and Connor switch positions, and that helps because on 57 minutes, Connor gives us the breathing space. He gets the ball fed to him by Carter. He quickly speeds past his man and blasts a shot into the net. And it's quite clear from reading the reports that the standard of finishing is top class. Virtually every goal is being blasted in with confidence and real top technique, which is what you expect, I suppose, when it's two teams at the right end of the table. So there we are, we're 5-3 up. With 15 minutes to go, Arsenal get a real slice of luck. Bowden has a bit of a wild shot, but it takes a massive deflection off Jimmy Clark and loops into the goal. That sets up your typical grandstand finish in the last 15 minutes. And it ends up being a real physical battle. Sunderland have a strong claim for a penalty turned away, but other than that, it's Sunderland on the defensive. Sunderland having to really work hard. It's a proper hard-fought game. And at full time, Sunderland have eventually won, 5-4. The fans are loving it. But the players, half the team are like hobbling off or have got injuries or are battered or bruised because they've really, really had to fight every inch of the way to get these points. As I said, it's a real statement in the title rest. And as for this suggestion about was it the best ever game at Roker Park, I can see why. The whole story around it and who we're playing and what it meant in our title race. It was a real high status game. Contemporary reports that weekend, they are pretty adamant that at that point it had been the best game ever played at Roker Park. which is a pretty bold statement to make. Roker Park was about 30 odd years. We're coming up to closer to 40 years by that point. And after that, there was only one or two games which came close to it. There's this Man City one, which I mentioned in 1973, and Kelvin says he would have loved to have been at some of these games. I know you were at the Man City game, weren't you, Kelvin? Never know. Yeah. You never know. You might have been stood next to an old boy who'd been at that Arsenal match all those years before, and he's shaking his head going, this current lot of rubbish. Give me the days of Gurney and Carter from the 30s. Those lads knew how to play football. So yeah, some game by the sounds of it.
Brilliant.
No, excellent stuff. And you always get this real sort of desire to see those games, don't you? You know, obviously the people who were there are long gone to pick memories from, draw memories from, but you can kind of delve through the newspaper archives, and Andrew's done a great job in bringing a bit of the feeling of that game to us. So it's why I kind of love doing things like this, because you just get a different perspective, don't you, on things, and you see the results written down, and that's one thing. But as you say, Kelvin, all those things are the same. There's 11 players there, the fans, big crowd there, 11 players playing for Sunderland, for Arsenal on the field, and
the names as well. You know, when you said there that Ted Drake scored for Arsenal, you know, he was a lad with a really interesting history as well. You know,
wasn't he involved with the FA a lot?
He was, yeah. His dad was a galleon captain and staved off the Spanish and the.
Right, I think I know where this is going, Kelvin.
You know what? When you started with that, I was like, this is going to be a joke. And then I thought, it's not. Double bluff.
I tell you what, as well, this it's interesting how certain things never change. It never changes that we have to read between the lines with Kelvin, because he's always got a cheeky joke somewhere tucked away. But also, hey, 2025 now. What have we got?
Right.
We've got Sunderland and Arsenal at the top of the table pushing for the title. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Sunderland are going to do it again in 2026. We're going to pip Arsenal to the title. We can dream. It is Christmas after all. We can have a Christmas wish.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Stuff. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And Andrew, do you have a little teaser for our listeners if they've got a little bit of spare time over Christmas, they can ponder on this one, can't they?
I do have a teaser. It was taking me a second there to find it on my document, but I have tracked it down. The question will lead us into week 29th of December to the 4th of January 2026. So, you know, I've just joked there about who knows what the new year's going to bring us. But it is exciting times, isn't it? It is exciting times, and
certainly
2026 might be another year that we're talking about down the line in Sunderland history. In terms of historical Sunderland stories, in 1986, we had an FA Cup tie against a side we had not played against up until that point. Not just competitively, I'm talking friendlies as well. I don't think we have played them since either. So that's the question. Who were this mystery club that in early 1986 we played so far for the one and only time in Sunderland history?
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, that's teased my senses.
Yeah, it's one to ponder on over the turkey on Christmas Day, isn't it? So we will say thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you to everybody for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with more stuff from Haway The Podcast to get stuck into your ears. and wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. But until next time, goodbye from us.
Podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The high-octane phenomenon, Sisu Road to Revenge, comes home with a bang. It's an insane ride and an adrenaline-filled action epic. Critics are raving with an explosive 96% score and certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, saying it's the action spectacular of the year, with some of the craziest fight set pieces ever put to screen. Don't miss the ultimate adventure. Get it now on Prime Video, Apple TV, or Fandango at Home. Rated R.